Well, welcome back to another episode. I'm stoked for today. If you are listening, remember the only way to watch the full episode is on the Patreon. So click the link down below and subscribe, and you can watch the full video. Our guest today is a good friend of mine and a person we shot an episode with before. It was actually the second episode we ever shot. And how long was it?
6 months ago.
No, like how long was the episode?
Oh, our episode was like 4 hours.
So
we just ended up hanging out for a long time.
Yeah, we ended up hanging out. So we brought him back to redeem ourselves, Redeem Team. He's one of my best friends. I've known him since I was 7. I'm going to butcher his intro, so I'm just going to let him go ahead and say it.
Yeah, sure. So I'm a psychiatrist by training. Finished up my residency at Yale, where I'm still a clinical instructor. I do drug development for the pharmaceutical industry, and I have a background in research in psychedelics, which I still do some work there.
And he's here to get us high, folks.
So me and we're on mushrooms. I'm just kidding.
Whatever that might mean to you.
Can I just give you your flowers right now? You are dressed so great. Look at your outfit. You look fantastic.
The first person you look at in the mirror every day, they better look back at you and say, you look pretty all right.
You look pretty all right.
It's a good combo of like English gentleman and like cowboy Colorado.
Yo, okay, actually.
With the like ostrich boots.
It's nice.
That is ostrich, right?
So, bravo.
Yeah.
And
I know my leathers.
There's a couple things here. One is that on one of y'all's podcasts, Jeremiah talked about how you can't wear a tapered pant with this sort of boot.
Oh, yeah. He said you got to go
wide leg
or
straight leg.
Which, to be honest, I'm Team Jeremiah on this.
I'm not wrong.
My point is that
unwavering.
There is no wrong or right. This is just me. And on that note, I did grow up in Colorado. And I used to wear cowboy boots and also a pocket watch. And I let people talk me out of wearing it because I got made fun of so much that I'm reclaiming what I don't care about anymore, which is you thinking that this is wrong.
I was going to say that's a polite way of
There
saying
is no right or wrong. You're right, but it's wrong. But you're right. There is no right or wrong.
All right. Well, we'll give that a 3-star. Might as well just get into our 5 stars.
Wait. Where's the 3-star going?
To your
to the
tapered boot.
Boot.
There's a reason they're called boot cut. Those, my friends, are
skinny jeans.
Hey, I love them.
But no, I like
agree.
That's fire.
Your outfit is fantastic.
It's you.
It's you. I love it.
It's fire for you.
What's funny is I used the Tacovas as my 5-star because those are the same boots that I wear. Covers are
But when I wear them, the 3-star. I got it.
No.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, let's go. Give me your...
Jeremiah,
is there a pocket watch in that vest? The world wants to know.
Is there a pocket watch?
There has to be.
I'm sleeping.
It could just be for show. Some people don't have one.
No, I'm sleeping this morning, and he decides to wind it up and set it right next to me sleeping, and all I hear is...
Listen, I was not winding it up.
What were you doing?
His alarm had gone off, so I said, what's the kindest way I can tell him it's time to go? So I started winding the pocket watch.
When's the last time our audience or any of us have seen a pocket watch in person? I don't see that.
That's a sick one. With seeing the mechanisms, that's sick.
The last time I saw a pocket watch was in Hook when he was like destroying all of them with the hammer.
Yeah, ding, ding, ding.
Thanks for never letting me blow bubbles in my milk.
Well, can I tell you one thing?
Oh yeah, when he has him do it as like therapy.
It's like therapy, like smashing the clock.
That's a beautiful one.
Yeah, that's pretty, man.
We have a propensity to reach for something in times of distress, let's just say. And oftentimes it can be the phone that quickly quells you because you enter a different reality. So for me, it can be the pocket watch where I just pull it out and I watch the second hand go by and it kind of creates space for me in the moment. And that is what it does for me.
Now, was that like passed down from your father's?
My father kept a watch in his ass for 2 years. It was birthright.
What movie?
You know that what movie that's from? Christopher Walken?
No.
You know the movie?
Spider-Man.
Oh my God.
You know what? No, it's from Pulp Fiction. But I was watching Catch Me If You Can yesterday. 2 mice fell into a bucket of cream. One of those mice quickly gave up and drowned. The other mouse fought so hard, he eventually turned that cream to butter. I stand here today. I am that second mouse. And everyone's like... And that's one of the best quotes I've ever.
It really is.
I stand here today. I am that second
Can
mouse.
I talk to you about how Judah just did a speech in front of several hundred people?
Oh my gosh.
And he started out with the Christopher Walken voice. However, nobody knew the context. So
no one knew Christopher Walken?
They didn't know why I was doing it.
They didn't know why he was doing it.
Katie and Evan did because they call me and they're like, do the Christopher Walken
And a
voice.
majority of these people in the room didn't know him. So he just came like raw dogged a Christopher Walken accent.
Thank the Rosenthals and the Schaumbans.
Wait, in this context, who is he raw dying and what is the dog that is raw?
This fucking guy with a question asking more questions.
Fucking guy.
I just want to know.
Just listen.
Yeah.
Okay, motherfucker.
Are you raw dogging me right now?
He basically.
Am I getting raw dogged right now?
Oh, Lordy.
This is going to be an episode.
Oh, man.
He
was talking for our friend's rehearsal dinner, but most of the people there were like above 50.
Yeah.
So they had no idea what the hell he was doing and whose accent it was.
They knew the accent. Multiple people were like stellar after. They're like great accent.
Your friends. Most people there.
The older people. Our friend thought I was doing like a handicapped person.
Yeah. No, most people thought like you were imitating like, you know, how Trump was like, oh, like people thought you were imitating like a mentally challenged.
Yeah, no. What movie did Platts think I was from? Platts was like, it wasn't Forrest Gump, but it was something. He was like, was that from that? I was like, no.
So most people were sitting there cringing.
No. Yes. I think so.
I wasn't going to.
As he was raw
dogging
just so you know, it was not part of my speech at all. 2 minutes before I go up, Jeremiah's like, do the Christopher Walken. To start it off. I was like, really? Our friends loved it, but.
I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But it was a weird group.
There was a few older people came up to me and they were like, great Christopher Walken. And then I gave them the context of the story when.
It was an older group of people, but it was fun.
Yeah, it was their parents' friends, but they liked it.
Yeah. It's good.
But Christopher Walken, good one. I like your pocket watch. It looks great. Let's get our 5 stars. I love the gold pocket watches a move. What is your 5-star of the week?
My 5-star of the week is actually a place you can buy pocket watches from, Mr. Porter online. It's basically the number one, I think, arguably the number one place to buy like your fits. I think they have the best clothing choices, mostly the most unique brands. A lot you've heard of, a lot you haven't heard of. They have accessories, ties, shoes. They have everything.
You said they had like chessboards.
They have like marble chessboards. They have fragrances. It's just like a one-stop shop for
dope stuff.
Honestly, for us.
What's it called? Mr. Porter?
Mr. Porter. And then there's a woman's site. It's just for men. The woman's version of it, like I think like the sister, is Net-a-Porter.
Net-a-Porter.
So if you need just like fly gear, like looking for top brands or even not top brands, like they have it all. Yeah.
Again, we'll put a link to that website for both of those on the newsletter and the Patreon. That sounds sick. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah. A leather jacket, done. You want the ostrich boots, done. You know, you want the taper, the straight leg. What is your 5-star of the week?
My 5-star of the week, I'm glad Ahmed's here for my 5-star. Chipotle. Chipotle is my 5-star. And the fact that you're even shaking your head, for people that are listening, Jeremiah's shaking his head. I'm grateful Ahmed's here to defend the reason I like Chipotle. Created in Colorado, where we're from, where me and Ahmed met. Around
the context is important here because people
eating it my
react
whole
like
life.
Jeremiah just said. Because right now it's kind of like McDonald's, saying like, oh yeah, the soul of my heart is at McDonald's, which is fine if that is the case for you. It's a bit different in the Chipotle case because we're Colorado kids.
And it was created in Colorado at the campus of DU in Denver. And right around the year we were born, we grew up eating it. And people were like, oh, McDonald's owns it. No, they don't. The guy partnered with McDonald's to scale, bought it back because he believed in having free range chicken and healthy organic stuff. So my 5-star is Chipotle, baby. I got my gift card for my birthday. I'll be eating it for life. Jeremiah is biting his tongue so hard right now. Chipotle, I love it.
Let me add some more context there. For most of our childhood, Chipotle was only in Colorado. And we used to, from different middle schools, because Judah and I and then our best friend Joe, we went to different middle schools. We would show up like intersecting Chipotles. We would convene with all these different friends and it would be this sort of home ground for us to connect every Friday or what have you. And it was
where
Chipotle became sort of like home for us. You come back to Colorado, how do you feel the sense of home? Will you eat Chipotle? Like that's where we gathered.
Chipotle off Orchard.
So it brings a sense of nostalgia.
And here's the thing. We've talked about this. When things expand, they don't get as good. They lose quality. The Chipotles we ate at as a kid when they were just in Colorado were incredible. I wrote a letter to the one in Brooklyn when I lived in New York City. I saw sour cream in the hot sauce. You bet your ass I wrote a letter to corporate. I went back 2 weeks later. That thing was running smooth.
Yeah.
Corporate came down. They cracked the hammer.
Yeah.
People were like, oh, Chipotle. Like, no, Chipotle's great.
I think I'm just like having trouble reconciling using Chipotle as a 5-star.
Dude.
But I get it.
What do you mean it's a 5-star? It's literally the main gift I got for my birthday was a Chipotle gift card from my family.
That's fair. It's your 5-star.
So it is. It's my 5 stars.
But this is the perfect thing about it is a 5-star for you.
Yeah.
Could be a 1-star for someone else.
That's true.
And does
That's
it
very
degrade
true.
your own 5-star or not is the testament to how 5-star it is for you.
That's
We're
true.
gonna cut that part out. My 5 stars, a 1-star to someone else.
To probably 99% of America. But I think I always envision 5-star as putting people on to stuff they don't know about. So I think it's more of like a difference in, I don't even care about Chipotle in general, but I think I have a different thought of 5-star.
Well, you're the king of the finer things club.
I am king of the Finer Things Club. But I think my goal has always been like, put people on shit they don't know about.
Yeah.
But to be fair, I get it. I understand.
I'm the leader of the people.
Fair. The People's Champ.
People's champ.
Yeah.
What does that make you?
The king of the Finer Things Club.
King of the Finer Things Club. That's what makes me.
Okay, so yeah, my 5 stars, Chipotle. I'll put a link down below.
Everyday basic shit, Judah.
Hey, I'll wear that with a badge of honor. I'm a normal guy. I'm a normal guy.
That's what normal guys say.
I am too. I can occasionally be bougie. What's your movie of the week?
Movie of the week is a movie I absolutely love. It came out in 2019. It's a foreign film called A Hidden Life. And it is about a cute little town in Austria. When Austria was overtaken by Germany, they made Austrian soldiers go to war for the Nazis. And this dude comes back home after witnessing what Hitler was doing, and he refuses to pledge his life to Hitler. The people in the town are like, "Ah, Hitler," and he's like, "Nope, won't do it." And it shows his struggle with his town. It's like starts micro and then goes macro, him not pledging his life to Hitler. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful story. Like their life was so cute before the war, little farm town in Austria. And then it shows you, he's just like, I can't do this. I know the evil that's going on and I will not pledge my life to this. Even though like everyone else wanted him to conform and just do it. And it shows his life through it. And it's such a beautiful movie. It's the guy from Inglourious Bastards, the Thrice guy. What's his name? August Dial. August Dial. Phenomenal movie. Put a link to it down below in the Patreon. It's an incredible movie, A Hidden Life.
Hidden Life.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful movie.
It's interesting how there's so many stories that still get told that we don't know about or told in a different way.
True story.
That time.
It's a true story.
Yeah. And usually from like, even as Judah is talking about it, from an exceptional standpoint. But one thing that we have a really hard thing of doing is putting ourselves in the situation and saying, would we be that one person who stood up and against? Because most likely we wouldn't.
No,
most of us wouldn't.
And the whole town is like, you're going to get killed. You're not only going to get killed, well, they're going to kill all of us because of you. Just put your, and it was literally as small as just doing that.
Yeah.
And he was like, no. Would I be that guy or would I just conform? I don't know. You would not know until you're in that position. A Hidden Life, phenomenal movie. Definitely got to see it. Song of the week. What do we got?
I'm going to go a little left field with this. It's called Big Feelings by Willow Smith. Definitely a wacky song, but I just like Will Smith. I think
love her.
She has bangers every now and then. Like,
wait a minute.
Yeah, Wait a Minute's my jam.
I think I found
Wait,
my
Will
gonna give her
Smith as in like Jaden Smith and
sister. Yeah, she's
Yeah,
a dope
Will
artist,
Smith's
man.
awesome.
She's just like unique. She's just like very unconventional, and I just like appreciate her like artistry. Honestly, it's not something you would typically hear on the radio or anything.
So what's the name of the track?
Big Feelings.
Big Feelings by Willow. It'll be on the playlist on the Patreon, curated by Jay. We had dinner last night. We were talking about so many different things that I think we can like jump into today.
You know what I'm curious about, actually, that relates to some of the things we were talking about yesterday. But when I'm listening to you talking about, oh, you haven't heard this song with music, and how music actually reflects a particular experience of a particular person. But we do judge each other based on it.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
Like I judge him on what?
As simple as something like, oh, you haven't heard this rock song? And Jeremiah, how many times I've heard him say, I missed this rock scene or whatever. In some way, it's saying that the people who are the people who listen to this music, he did not have this experience. And they do skew towards a certain racial identity, towards a particular socioeconomic status versus what did Jeremiah listen to? And so you get this really interesting way in which music synthesizes a whole racial, cultural, ethnic identity. But it's something that we can very easily say, I like someone who listens to the same music as me. Or this person gets me because they listen to the same music. I can't believe that person hasn't listened to this music. In a way, if you expand that, you are actually embodying a lot of these constructs of differentness. And in some way, they're sort of segregationist in saying that if you had these kinds of means, you listen to this kind of music. If you look like this, you most likely listen to this kind of music. So when people are starting to say, I want someone who listens to this same kind of music, or, oh my gosh, you haven't listened to this music, it's actually a lot more harmful than just that.
So it's harmful when I bring up a rock band and I'm like, can't believe you've never listened to Nirvana or Rolling Stones or...
Maybe I shouldn't use the term harmful because the implication there is that you meant to cause harm or that Jeremiah sustained some kind of pain. But
you're saying is a deeper connotation to it.
Yes, it is a small thing that reflects a large thing. And you can almost see it like y'all cared a lot about each other. And very quickly it became, oh my God, you haven't heard that?
Yeah, in my mind, I'm like, I can't believe you haven't. And then I'm like, yeah, I can believe that. You grew up in Florida. You didn't grow up in Colorado. a totally different world. So me saying like, I can't believe you never listened to them. Same way when we had AZA on and you guys were talking about what your dad used to play at the house. What was it? Like Kirk Franklin and that stuff. I never listened to that. So yeah, I guess it's very interesting. And you're definitely right.
I think it's what you were raised around. I think sports, it's such a huge way to bring people together. So I remember like when we were younger, we'd be traveling to our games and like we were only playing like to the windows,
to the wow.
Right? Like we're playing like, I think music that reflected our team.
Right.
You know, our team was predominantly black. And then you kind of have like the one or two white guys on the team and we were like integrating our music to them. And you could tell like, and they loved it, but it like they typically would listen to something much different.
Right.
You know what I mean?
There's so much right there. I mean, in a way, for example, if Judah was like, oh, I didn't have that experience, then in a way you're kind of saying you didn't have the black experience. And then in a way, when Judah was talking about, what I don't know, ACDC,
rock and roll,
whatever, yeah. He's kind of saying you didn't have the white experience. And we're talking in generalities. Of course, there's exceptions to all of these things.
Yeah.
But we start to not be able to talk about anything if we keep saying, oh, well, that's not always the case or whatever, but on average. And so in a way, that's kind of what we're talking about. It's very interesting that you brought up the sport thing too. You remember last night what we were talking about? With like the barrier to entry into basketball, why it's a certain type of sport and stuff.
Yeah. We can get into that. I want to say that's one of my favorite things about when you curate your playlist and listening to the music.
Yeah.
Because you are showing me stuff that I don't normally listen to. And when I love it, I'm like, damn, I'm liking something for the first time. I'm experiencing new music that I've never listened to, and I really, really like it.
Yeah.
And that's super exciting. That's my favorite part about when you send me music. I've never listened to it. I've never listened to that style of music. So I'm literally hearing it for the first time, and I'm like, whoa, this is fucking awesome.
This is because when I say things and I'm like, oh, well, if you have this kind of perspective when you have different music tastes, or if you're seeking the same music taste, this is where, to counterpoint that, there's a wish behind that. And my wish is that people would just be like, oh, you don't know this music? Awesome. Let's listen to it together and let's vibe to it together. Let's rhythm to it together. Or say something like, it's not necessarily that you're looking for someone who listens to the same music and in a way saying, I'm looking for someone who afforded the same things as me, looks the same as me, shares the same background. Instead, you're saying, this is the kind of music that I grew up with. I wonder if someone else could also enjoy this type of music with me. And that creates immediately more acceptance for different types of people. Most people don't do that.
So are you saying, is your theory that your music taste is formed similarly to how our ideas are formed?
Completely. And I think
through peers, friends, upbringing,
culture,
environment, economic status?
Yes, completely. And there are ways in which people of different groups, you can almost sample them and say, well, it's not always the case. Sure.
It's true, right?
Sure, there's exceptions, but on average. And so when we start to use, these are the kinds of things that are hidden. These constructs hide things. So if you say something like music similarity versus difference, in a way you're kind of saying cultural or racial or financial difference.
That's actually really funny because on the new Bad Boy 4 trailer, the movie Bad Boys, Will Smith, Martin Lawrence.
Shout out to my sister for making it.
They're on the fourth one?
Fourth one. There's a scene.
Yeah, hold on, because I haven't done it. Shout out my sister Eden, who works at X and makes a lot of movie trailers. She did the trailer for Bad Boys 4.
It's a dope trailer.
Shout out
I
Eden.
really like the trailer. There's a scene where they're wearing like a Dolly Parton shirt, but they somehow like stumbled onto some like backwoods like trailer home area. And these two like racist white dudes like pop out. And they're like looking at the two black dudes like, hey, sing a Dolly Parton song if you're one of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And Will Smith and Martin Lawrence look at each other like, Bad Boy. They start like singing the Bad Boys theme and they're like, that's not Dolly Parton. Like, it's so funny, man. But to your point, like, yeah.
Music hides an entire identity. So
interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk, Jeremiah brought this thing up and I was actually mind blown when you said it, when we were talking about basketball and the barrier to entry and how hard other sports are and why people are like, oh, the majority of the NBA is 98% African-American.
Can we actually go back? Do you mind sharing the specific story? Because that story was so interesting, that person who you were sitting next to on the airplane.
I was flying home and...
This is recent.
Yeah, recently, a few months, within the last few months. And I was flying home and I was sitting next to this kind of older white lady, maybe like 60s. And I could just tell she wanted to talk to me.
Oh my God.
And like, I just wanted to rest. I don't mean to be antisocial on planes, but that's pretty much my demeanor and my purpose. Like, I don't want to talk to you. I just want to like sleep or relax, pretty much. This is like my time to just disconnect in a way. Yeah, I got 4 or 5 hours here. I'm going to disconnect. And she just would not stop talking to me. And she brought up, somehow we started talking and He's like, oh, like about my background. And one thing leads to another. We're talking about sports and basketball comes up. And she's like, yeah, I mean, she kind of felt like the NBA and NFL had like a mandate almost to like
exclude.
Yeah, had like a mandate to exclude white players.
It wasn't she felt that, she believed that.
She believed that. So like a reverse racism, essentially. Like, oh, the NBA only wants black players. The NFL only wants black players. And obviously like...
She said this to you?
That's what she was saying. And I like looked at her and like realized how serious she was. And I was like, well, how come you're not applying that logic and that thought process to tennis or golf? Or why don't you feel triggered towards golf and tennis in the way that it's primarily majority white? I was like, because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve how you think. And I was like, to be fair, I was like, like basketball started out only white. I told that to her. I was like, it was the only white sport. African Americans were not allowed to play. I was like, so all of a sudden now, like it's just become an all black sport because like the roots and foundation of basketball was an all white sport. Yeah. Same with football. Same with every fucking sport
Harvard
in America.
And Yale and Michigan.
And now the thing that y'all ended up coming back to when you were having this conversation is, well, what was the barrier to entry?
Correct.
To all these sports, and what ended up being the case once the barrier to entry proved certain cases?
Yeah. So I started like kind of going one by one with her. I was like, okay, let's look at this. This is me on the plane, like literally like, all right, let me spell this out for you, Karen.
wait, that has now become a very inflammatory thing to call someone. So let's first go through the case and then we can decide whether or not she's a Karen.
I like this.
Well, honestly, I don't think she was. I think it's funny for me to say it. But
it is.
I think I'm at the point now where it's like, I have compassion for people who only have this one viewpoint, one way of thinking, because that's just, what you're taught. You know what your friends think, what your peers, what you're listening to, what you're being fed.
Yeah.
And like, even though that is ignorance, I think personally I have to have some type of compassion for it.
We are all ignorant in some way.
Absolutely.
There is some way in which, even if you have a perspective of, hey, wait a minute, look at the proportions of people in this sport versus this sport versus this sport. And she has the perspective of, well, look at this proportion and I'm feeling this way. That all is actually part and parcel of who you grew up around.
Yeah.
And so in a way, you're almost, which is almost a perverted way to look at it, but you're blessed to have the whole frame of why, in fact, her frame is a harmful frame.
That's fair. But I also understand why people also have no compassion for ignorance as well.
Yeah. Well, what did you do with her? You went through sport. And what did she say when you got to...
I started with basketball and I started with football. I said, predominantly in America, most low-income neighborhoods are people of color. In those neighborhoods, there are free parks everywhere with what? Basketball hoops.
By the way, by design, those neighborhoods.
By design.
Yeah.
I was like, there's basketball hoops. All you need is a ball. You can
field.
$20, you have a ball that can last you years.
Yeah.
Years on years. And I was like, football, open field, footballs, other balls, $30, $40. I was like, low barrier of entry there.
Yeah.
I was like, easy for that community to access.
And get really good at it.
And get really good. I was like, well, let's talk about tennis. I was like, okay.
$200 racket.
Sure, there's public courts, but you need to buy a racket. A racket's minimum like $250. You need
one-on-one training courses.
You need more than one racket.
Yeah.
You need to string your racket. Racket strings, bro, $30, $40, $50, $60 just for string. Stringing will last you a month, and then the string breaks.
And then you need balls.
Then you need balls. Then you need instructor. You need lessons. You need someone to hit back to you in tennis.
Yeah.
Right? Most cases, you need a country club to access. Yeah. If you want a good
certain
court.
neighborhood too.
Where I was going to say, most of those tennis courts don't even have a net. It's just the court, and there's no net there.
Exactly. I'm like, so that started as an elitist sport is still that way. It's a good old boy sport.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason why people got really excited when Tiger Woods was big in golf, because it finally appealed to a whole mass in a way and saying like, well, we don't have any representation of the black community, and now we kind of do.
People want to keep 100 about golf, bro. Like, it's been a racist sport for a long time. It's just
Tell me about the barriers to entry. Tell me about the barriers to entry.
I mean, dude, golf is out of control.
First
of all, let's talk about how Tiger, like when he first got to the Masters, bro, how like Augusta notoriously like anti people of color.
Really?
They're notorious for it. It's not a secret. Like, you can go Google it. Like, it's craziness. And so again, barrier of entry is very high for golf.
So expensive.
Clubs are $1,000+ easily. Instructor every hour, 100, 150.
Playing one round, you can't play for free.
Mostly cannot play for free. There are no public free golf courses. You still got to pay money, right? If you want like access to a challenging course, you got to be a member there. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Unless they sponsor you, No country club is sponsoring people of color before 2000 in most cases.
Yeah.
Like you had to have like a passionate father who was probably like working at the country club.
I'm so glad that we're bringing this up as well, because this was the thing. I went to University of Colorado, Boulder, and it's almost entirely white. And
that's why I love Coach Prime going there.
People are obsessed with Winter Olympics there. And I used to call them, and probably I was being inflammatory and much more immature than I am now. Maybe the same amount of immaturity, actually. But I used to call it the Olympics of privilege. And you look at everyone in the sport in terms of the Winter Olympic sports, and they're all white. Every single sport that they do requires an immense amount of privilege to even start to try to see if you're okay at it.
Yeah, I'm a professional skier.
And they have these, I mean, you start to learn of it, and they have these like summer camps where they go to the lakes and they practice these tricks on these inflatables that cost like tens of thousands of dollars just to be serviceable, and just getting a ski pass, getting skis, doing all these things. The barrier to entry is so high to where if you want to go back to basketball, and soccer is the same way, and say, well, why is the distribution this way there? And why is the distribution this way there? Actually, you have your evidence as to what is playing out in terms of racial dynamics.
100%. I think the problem, like today, I just feel like when you throw privilege at people, like there's like a sense of guilt towards it. I think people feel bad. Like I don't feel like it's a bad word. Like privilege isn't a bad thing. Like
it's got a bad connotation.
I'm a product of privilege. You know what I mean? It's not a bad thing, but it gets demonized. And I think people feel triggered when it's like thrown at them.
They feel personally responsible.
Yeah.
And then they feel like what they have done or achieved is now being discredited.
Correct.
Because they cannot start from that same point of nothingness. And so it's so funny because now they have this personal, like, well, you're taking away from my story. And remember I told you that story the other day where someone was talking about, oh, well, my ancestors came here and they were poor. And, this was a white German lady and they were poor and they worked hard. So I just don't know why Black culture has a lot of laziness in it, why they don't just work harder. And so there's so much we can dissect there. But at bottom, what I can say very simply is that the white woman, she felt that her family story came at the expense of acknowledging that there could be all these systems by which someone who was a different color than her may have worked just as hard and wasn't able to get there because of these systems that cut them down at every level. So it took away from her story. It's as simple as that. She may not even like it. She may not even feel any type of way towards Black culture or Black people, but she almost has to say that actually the nexus of the issue is at this thing which is personable or personal responsibility, which is, why don't you just work harder like we did because we got here? It's actually not, it could be both. It could be as harmful of a thought as that. And it also could be just saying, can you also acknowledge that we worked hard and we got here, which we can discuss the merits of that. But
yeah, she was just taking it as like, don't take away, like I did work hard.
Yeah.
So like a defense.
So immediately,
but also defensive. Generalizing an entire race and culture. They don't work hard.
Completely. And, people will not say that. Eventually, they'll get to a point. You'll talk about, okay, well, do you know about these systemic campaigns to put people in these neighborhoods, these drug laws that were specifically targeted? You can even look at it in our legal language to target certain communities. Do you know about these different dynamics in terms of what happens to people in terms of healthcare and education and all these things?
Which all compound.
Yeah. And then you get there and you say, okay, so where is it? Where is it that you're saying, like you're saying culture, but culture is actually just kind of a combination of all these things around someone. So where is it exactly that you're saying is the deficiency versus your circumstance? And it really comes down to the person, and all they're left to say is, well, I think that there's something faulty with the person, or I think they're lazy. And then they'll back off and stop there. That's when you hit people that you see this weird dissonance. I don't know how to get through that dissonance. People start to just basically turn around and say, I don't want to have this conversation anymore. Because it reveals, and that's the hidden aspect of any kind of thing that we want to call like racism.
But don't you think she wants to stop having that conversation because she feels attacked by it, rather than like when we were talking about it, I was like, whoa, never thought of it like that. Keep going.
That too. Both at the same time, and many more things.
Like when you brought up the tennis thing, I was like, whoa, because I've never experienced that. I never even thought of it. I was like, whoa, yeah, that is
for sure.
It takes money to play that sport. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, it takes money.
But I don't on the plane probably
but that doesn't make me upset. I'm like, oh my God, I'm glad I know that now. Because I've never thought of it that way.
Well,
I wasn't like, Jeremiah, I feel attacked by it. No, I was like, whoa.
But we all have different stakes in the game. who knows what was going on for that woman? Maybe she like had a nephew who wanted to play basketball and some shit happened to him.
Okay, well, with like giving everybody an opportunity and making quotas and stuff for inclusivity, have you experienced any of that in like the medical space at all?
Yeah, so it's a several level answer, and yes, and it's not as straightforward as anyone wants to think. We look at the end stage of all these issues, which I would say is what we do in mental health as well. We look at the very end stage of what's going on and we say, well, let's just fix that. There's this entire root disease of a system that is causing certain things. And then at the end, we say, well, let's just switch a couple leaves, in a way, is what I would say. So specifically in medical training and education, it's actually more contentious than you would think, because there are people who definitely are against, in a way, or riled up by quote unquote diversity initiatives. Now, I mean, first of all, to say that you can solve an issue by saying, okay, we will distribute admissions or placements based on certain identities at the end, you're not solving anything of the whole system. Now, people have an issue with even that. Recently, I had some friends go to Alabama, and I'm not too versed with that culture. And so they were talking to some white man and they were curious about his perspective. And they were like, we're not from around here. I'm just wondering, like, what's the sense of like racism still here? Because this is one of those states that has embodied that for a while. And the man was like, racism. We need to start talking about reverse racism. Have you heard of affirmative action? And it's funny because if you look at studies that have looked at what would happen or what does happen when you repeal affirmative action, the rates of most demographics stay the same. What changes is less white people get in without affirmative action and more Asian people get in. There's a severe limiting factor of, right now, this is the month of Pacific Islander, Hawaiian, Asian American. It is so fucking disrespectful because that is 2/3 to 3/4 of the world's population, and they are nothing alike. And we're saying that we're just going to partition all of you into this month. And now this is the same thing that happens actually with affirmative action. That's a bit of an aside, but just saying that we don't even understand the ways in which we are controlling who gets in and what happens in a way that actually benefits people we wouldn't suspect it benefits. Now, if we are doing the thing where at the end we're saying, well, we need a couple of these people, we need a couple of those people, we are still actually disservicing the whole system because there's all this harm that leads to that point.
Yeah, it's not like who's the best for that position or that role. It's best out of this category and best out of this category.
Who happens to make it past all these different things that have made it to people who don't get there. I mean, when I was interviewing for medical school, I had several people at several schools say things like, you wrote about being, I'm half Punjabi and half Bedouin, and people, you wrote about being Punjabi and you know that you're overrepresented, right? Overrepresented. That's the thing that we're talking about with affirmative action. And what it means is we have too many of the model minority, which is Asian Americans, which is all sorts of different types of people. And we don't have enough of whatever else. And so actually it becomes more difficult to get in if you're Asian American. People would say this specifically. My friend got into University of Colorado. He applied at the same time as me, and I didn't find this out until later. And so he's a white man, and he applied, and I applied. We had the same interview date, and when you get the interview date kind of indicates how much the school likes you, which is we got it same date, way early. And during my interviews, it's expressed to me, this is a trite story. This is kind of overrepresented, your Punjabi story. Like, we're not really looking for that. And I find out later that my white friend in his essay had lied to them and said that he acculturated my family. So that was what they were looking for. They were looking for a white man who said, I ingratiated this brown family into white culture. But they said that the brown man who was from that culture, who said, I am from this culture, was something they didn't really want. Now, our interviews, they were so different. He was asked about skiing, the Olympics of privilege, and he was asked about like fun things like hiking. I sat in there and I was grilled about the Affordable Care Act before it even came out. And I did not agree with the person. We're going back and forth. And he's talking about, well, what about this, this, and that? And
basically, Billy had a fluff interview and yours was getting...
And these are the kinds of things that are not talked about anywhere else in terms of how racism plays out.
Well, so is it actually about who's best for the job?
It should be.
It should be.
But is it?
But is it, is my point. Like, does it actually come down to like, oh, this guy has the best credentials, regardless of color, regardless of race, and culture. This is our man.
No way.
But people think that's the thought.
Yeah.
For everything. They're like, oh, well, it's just whoever's best, whoever owns it, whoever deserves it, whoever.
No, it's whoever fits the role the best of what they're wanting.
Yeah.
How did this whole thing end up playing out between you and your friend who applied at the same time as you did, with you both having two completely different interview experiences?
Right. Yeah. Specifically at that medical school, he got in, I got waitlisted, and then I never got in.
Interesting.
Whoa.
And so you have to imagine, how often does this happen everywhere? Now, I have been on admissions committees at this point, and they are looking for anything to just knock you out. And really what they'll do, it's as simple as, oh, a resident doesn't like someone, or this interviewer doesn't like the, and that's all you have to say, because they're looking for anything. How certain are you that what people are saying is the reason why they don't like someone has to do with some dynamic or the other? In a way, some people might say that we end up selecting someone who fits behaviorally into what we like. And you and I have had this conversation before. We only say things like brown and black and white because it's kind of in reference to this background upbringing or a certain universe of beingness inside of us that doesn't exactly relate to actually our skin color. And if we want to say that, we should actually only say brown skin, because everyone is really brown. But it matters insofar as it speaks to, there are these set of circumstances you've had versus another. So coming back around, you might say that you are selecting people who fit certain ethnic or racial backgrounds, but only in as much as they fit in with whatever we mean by white culture. That's how I would come back to, we're switching around the leaves at the end and saying, oh, we're solving the issue, and why it doesn't really satisfy anyone, because the whole system is still...
Yeah, it's like, look over here. Meanwhile, this is all still bad.
And so now, in some way, you're actually hurting people of color, because you're kind of saying the closer you happen to stumble along these obstacles and get here and then fit into this culture, then we switch you in. And by the way, you're actually disservicing other people who may deserve to be there just because they're switching things at the end. Whereas if you actually worked backwards to the root of things and said, let's create some equality in terms of opportunity from the beginning, then both and all groups might be less angry. Because you notice these problems don't really help anyone feel better.
Well, what about like in a situation where someone hired you to help change the culture, to help uproot their foundation to integrate more equality?
Yeah.
Is that something that could be a benefit? Well, is that a different way to potentially...
Is it possible?
First, it's necessary. And what's really cool about different models, especially when you think about the public sector versus private sector, there's a lot of companies in the private sector that are like, we just need to do this and let's figure it out. Versus the public sector, you get a lot of like, well, let's think about how we can do this before we start doing it. So I'll just say that is maybe the model that is really cool that could work there. So it's necessary. How would it be done? I'm not going to pretend to know.
Yeah.
Now, do they have to happen in an exclusive manner? No, they can happen at the same time. And then you start getting to this long-term solution, because in a way, that's actually how I would view the human body and healing, or whatever we want to call the psyche and its healing. Is there is a specific set of symptoms that are presenting right now that you need to treat. Otherwise, you're going to bleed out. But at the same time, you need to look back and say, well, why am I bleeding out? And you have to do both at the same time. If you do one or the other, either you're going to die right then, or you're going to die in a little bit.
Yeah, but we just put Band-Aids on bullet holes.
Well, I'm glad you both brought that up, because like psyche is kind of what you do now, is what you've been practicing, correct?
Oh, right. Like why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Correct.
Yeah.
And psychedelics and all these things that promote
going to the root
and finding a way, hopefully, to...
It's crazy. It's systematic. It's big. And then it's also like so personal and individual.
Because all
of it is go to the root.
I've never taken drugs, right? I've never done cocaine. I've never done psychedelics. I've done one edible in my life, like 5 milligrams years ago with friends.
Great night.
And I had a blast, but I could say I've just never really done drugs. I've never smoked. I've done cigars. Like, I don't know what anything feels like. I don't know what the experience is psychologically, but you guys have explored different psychedelics, drugs through your life. Mm-hmm. And I know there's been some evidence of how helpful it can be. And I've been explained that, and correct me if I'm wrong,
that's one of the things that scares you, what you said about it.
Well, it does scare the shit out of me. Yeah, because I'm like, does it rewire your brain? I think like people...
You don't know what you'll find.
you don't know what you'll uncover, one.
Yeah.
Two, there's, stories like it'll rewire your brain, which I don't even know what that actually means. Like, I won't be the same person anymore? Like, I won't be me? I think losing that sense of self or that sense of control is certainly scary, especially for me. I like to be in control. And
even though you never are actually.
Fair.
You like the illusion of control.
I like the illusion of it.
Yeah.
And I think I've been told.
That's intense, the illusion of control.
That's for everyone.
That psychedelics, maybe not all of them, but it's like a fresh snowfall on all these ski slopes.
When you
on your brain.
Yeah,
your brain has these grooves that you've been using for years, and then when you take it powder, where you can
like fresh powder.
Yeah.
There are so many things that you just said. There are so many things that you just said. So
let's unpack.
We can talk about, first you talked about like what I'm doing now and at large, which a lot of what I'm doing is drug development.
Yeah.
We can talk about that. We can talk about psychedelics and do they actually address root causes or not, which is somewhat that you hinted at, and actually how they relate. What do you want me to say? What's
the most relatable to most people?
So we've been talking a lot about this concept of root cause, what happens at the end, the outcomes, what do we do? And how do you address outcomes while addressing the roots? I actually think that this relates specifically and entirely to psychedelics because people do view psychedelics as a way to address root causes of illness. Trauma, let's say. And that is actually, many people would say not entirely true and actually almost even deceptively true. But it can be something that is profoundly impactful in healing. Now, what do I mean by that? You just mentioned trauma, which is actually, if we want to talk about where psychedelics are at, MDMA is the closest to possibly being approved. And that is in PTSD. It's a very conducive condition, actually, because if you really look at it, I would honestly make this argument for all psychiatric and medical illnesses, that there's a major component of what has been happening to you environmentally and then also with your body that has contributed to illness. But the one illness that we for sure say this is definitely the case is PTSD. And so this is why it's conducive. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is that this is the being, let's say, without the incurrence of any harms of the world. This is the being as it goes. And the being as it goes incurs, maybe over time, maybe all of a sudden, incidents or an incident that causes trauma, or maybe a better way to say it, an incident that is traumatic. And then they divide there, right? And so you have almost your personhood here, and you have your personhood divided into symptoms that then can get worse. And
yeah, they're all going their own direction, getting bigger.
Yeah. And you can diagnose PTSD more than 660,000 ways. So it's nothing specific. We have to diagnose things because we live in an insurance-based system. And that's the reason why we even have diagnoses. But now this happens over here. And psychedelics, and it's not always the case, but have the potential to sort of return you in this way to yourself.
Like to that moment where you can fix, you can be whole.
To that moment before you divide it.
That's the better way that I would want to say it. To the moment of your division and why did you divide, what's going on in some way. Making meaning of your division.
Which is a version of you that you don't remember.
That's an interesting way of putting it because I would say a lot of what ends up being the case for PTSD is you get divided into symptoms that end up being your sense of self. So you are anxious or you're hypervigilant or you're fearful necessarily because that's how you survive the situation. Now, you start remembering yourself as just that instead of also, because you could be that.
Yeah, it's just one of those parts that flew off, but you're attached to that part.
But generally, not for everybody, a lot of those incidences, a lot of that division happens at childhood.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for saying this.
Yeah, so the work going all the way back is hard.
So what
I don't remember anything. I don't remember how the first division I ever had. I don't remember. I was a kid.
Yeah, but I think the work is trying to figure out how the thing you don't remember has been affecting you.
So I thank you for going all the way back to birth because the reason why I framed it as beingness here and tracking along here is because there was all this shit that happened to you and within you that led to there. So psychedelics can get you here. They're not doing jack shit about all of that. And what we fail to see is that we're very excited about psychedelics because they are a way in which we can just grab the outcome without grabbing the roots and just imagine we're actually taking you back to this. But there are so many things in this society and whatever was happening to you that led to there, it actually does nothing about the system in which, why is the question not being asked why so many people are developing PTSD? are developing depression. Instead, we say, let's get them back to here instead of saying, what is causing this? Psychedelics will not go all the way back through the person and fix the system. And it's as simple as that.
But it doesn't go back and fix it, but it takes you back.
For some people, their experience is that they reclaim, in a way, their sense of self in a way that they can integrate in a way that is more helpful to them.
And that's why they feel like a new person to other people. Because like all these traumas and division, they don't have attachment to anymore. Right? So like
they're lighter. It's lighter. If you're not carrying these things.
Well, it's like
I don't know if I like the connotation of lighter or heavier.
We're experiencing a different version of Judah.
I could say it.
We're experiencing a different version of Judah. Let's say you go.
It happened to me. I
would say
did mushrooms
and
I had this moment of like, oh, all the stuff that I carry with me, this weight for making my career and doing these things. I took them and I laid in a hammock and I cried happy tears of joy because I was like, none of that shit matters. I was like, whoa, I have all these other things that are so awesome and so grateful. I was like, I don't need to stress about that all the time. It's a thing that I've been carrying my whole life. Got to do this, got to do that. And when I was on the mushrooms, I was like, no, like I have my family, I have my friends. And those are the things I need to focus on and be grateful about. And I was different after that.
Are there not things that there are levels, I'm assuming, to psychedelics and experiences and doses and
they're all different.
Right.
They're not consistent.
Right. Yeah. And so we know of certain psychedelics that will have even a more profound effect than what you're talking about in the hammock. That like you come out of it.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. So I don't know about like more or less profound. People use every single psychedelic compound in many different ways and have for centuries. Now, I keep hearing you go back to, well, what happens when you completely change, when you lose this part of yourself, when you become a new person? Am I hearing that that's like the...
No, I'm not saying... Listen, I don't know anything about... I've never took a psychedelic.
But there's some worry there that you're...
No, I think
you lose yourself.
No, I'm not. I don't think when you lose yourself, I think it's taking you back to yourself before the division. And that version of yourself is new to you and everybody else because you no longer are attached to the things that divided you.
Or it is in some way those parts you've integrated into yourself and nothing is new, but the combination is new. And so, yes, the experience for you and other people could be new in a way. I would argue that this is actually something that's behind a lot of whatever you want to call it, relationships, other things like depression, and then also coming out of depression or integrating yourself in a way to where you're no longer depressed, like however you want to phrase it. And I would say this because a lot of times, you and I were talking about anger yesterday, for example, and a lot of times anger can take you somewhere that's really fucking awesome. You wouldn't have been able to get to otherwise. And then there's things behind it to where you can start saying, okay, it's not just anger. It's also these other things that I want to integrate where I'm at.
Can you give me an example of when anger would be used in a good way?
Yeah. It can drive you.
To do things you wouldn't have otherwise.
Correct.
In a good way.
In a good way.
And in a bad way.
Both.
All these
for
different,
sure.
Like, it's interesting because when people think of anger, they think of it used in a bad way. Anger can be used to fuel you, to push you, to get you to another level that if you weren't angry, you'd never go to.
Listen, we live in a sedated society. And what I mean by that is sedated is maybe we live in a tamed society purposefully. Insofar as there have been many cultures throughout time and even right now where passions are valued. I'm angry and this is why, here's the meaning of it. I'm sad, this is why, here's the meaning of it. Because it doesn't need to extend to, and I'm going to harm someone else because of this. But we live in a society where you're powerful if you're calm, if you don't show your emotions, if you don't react. We prize dissociation and disconnectedness and detachment in this society.
Not on this pod.
Not here.
Well, I think there's something about psychedelics that scare the shit out of me. I'm not talking about microdosing. I'm talking about proper
dose.
Tell me what scares you.
They call that a hero's dose.
A hero's dose of psychedelics, whether it's ayahuasca or
acid,
DMT, so on and so forth, that I have no idea how my brain is going to react and what effect it's going to have on me to the point where I still like the things that I like. Will I still value the same things that I value? Will the things that I feel like are important now still be important to me?
You're like, wait, I don't like coffee anymore?
Like, will I? Do I want to open myself up to that much opportunity to change when I don't potentially might not want to right now? That scares me.
One, that's completely fair. Two, your fears are very actually common. And I'm not here to shame or venerate them.
Yeah.
Either way. just acknowledge them. And it's really like your fear to determine whether or not it should be something that's present of mind. I think the parts of ourselves that are fearful are actually very loving. They are in some way protecting us from something. I very much dislike the rhetoric that there's no fear in love. I think fear is maybe some of the most loving parts of ourselves in some cases. And then to go to what I heard from you is, what if I lose these parts of myself and I end up in this way in which I didn't want? I can assume why all of that is scary, but you tell me what's scary about losing these certain things. What is the worst thing that you're imagining that I can't imagine because I'm not in your head?
I don't know. I think like who I am now will die. It's almost like, I don't know.
Yeah. And
something to ponder.
And some of the most important
It's not black and white. That's the thing. It's not a black and white answer.
The most important time we can spend with ourselves is to understand why we feel a certain way, and as simple as that, not rush it. But also, I would say with psychedelics in particular, when you feel called to it, you feel called to it. And that certainly seems to be the case with people who take it and why it's beneficial, and people who have bad experiences that end up worsening or harming, which certainly psychedelics can do. And even MDMA can do that.
You mean it can just highlight more of your trauma or your PTSD?
It can make you more, essentially what seems to be the case. And anyone who tells you about what actually is going on or mechanisms, they're bullshit because we don't know, is one thing. There's a lot of different hypotheses, none really proven. And all these ways in which we look for an effect, they are achieved by so many different ways. So just to say that. Now, in a way, it seems that people are made more vulnerable, or the access to the difficult material that is causing whatever's going on becomes a bit more open. Now, what happens with who handles that? I mean, I would say, and I've said this to y'all before, most therapists and most psychiatrists, I would not go to. Now, does that change for psychedelic therapy? I would be even more particular about who I go to. And so...
because it could open up something in you that you might not be able to deal with. And even though you might be going there to heal it, and the psychedelic conversion is like, you can heal it if I open it up more.
How do people respond? How do they hold it? Because this took so long to, in a way, build up. How does it get held? How does it get released? How does it get reintegrated? And there's a lot of people who worsen
from doing it. What's funny is when I've done in the past with certain people, one of the things that I always do is like I set an intention for it. I'm like, whatever I'm supposed to find or deal with, give me the strength to deal with that thing. Because you don't know necessarily what will come up. Like people do have bad trips. And I think the environment that you're in when you're doing it, if you're going into it and you're like, I know I'm going to probably deal with some stuff. Please help me get through that stuff and deal with it and see it through. Compared to, I know some people that don't do that and they're like doing it party life, party whatever, and then it goes bad.
That sounds like you're throwing a wish in a well and hoping like it all works out for you.
Yeah.
It's been explained to me that it's like your conscious and your subconscious meeting for the first time.
Can I say one thing is that it's interesting that we say conscious and subconscious, because the implication is that there's a conscious and then there's an underconscious, because it's really just unconscious and conscious. It's something that you are aware of versus not. But I think that actually reflects exactly what you're talking about. There's this power dynamic that we envision. We envision that either our, what people like to say subconscious, but is actually unconscious, is bullying the conscious, or the conscious is bullying the unconscious.
Whoa.
And people might argue one way or another in a way. Most likely, if you want to actually use that rhetoric, it's probably that the unconscious is bullying the conscious, because
that's crazy.
Because most of the way that we behave is based on stuff that we're not even aware of. And so could it be that psychedelics are integrating in a way the bully with the bullied? I like the metaphor. I don't think it entirely captures everything.
But there's something there.
There's something there. And maybe the something there that I would say, I really like the model of the psyche that doesn't use Freudian models of the psyche, which when we say conscious and unconscious, we're immediately subscribing to that. No matter what you think of Freud, the minute that you say things like ego, superego, and stuff like that, you're subscribing to it. There's also ways in which people conceptualize psyches as in a different way. And so one way to conceptualize it is we have all these different beings of ourselves or parts of ourselves. We talked about fragmentation with pain or with traumatic events, and then a unity and an integration. In a way, we're kind of looking at all of them and integrating them in, saying, hey, this part that we imagine is bullying us into working this way. What are you actually doing for me? Who are you protecting over here that's actually hurt? Can all of us now come in and say, hey, can we work together? Can we make a life that I actually kind of want?
That's crazy.
It's like it's scary to meet the bully.
It's scary to meet the bully,
it's
but
scary to meet the bully.
All the evidence shows that bullies are the most hurt people. And so can we have love for our bullies? That maybe when we go to, could psychedelics be doing something in that way? I would say,
yes.
Maybe it's helping us have compassion for our bullies, and maybe vice versa. Our bullies have compassion for like those bullies.
Psychedelics are allowing the opportunity to grab something deep. It's allowing you to go in and bring up what's been suppressed by the bully.
Oh, it allows your mind to expand more than it could without it.
One of my favorite.
I feel like it's a little key to open it up.
One of my favorite quotes, and it's so funny because this movie was made during a time of psychedelics, is Dune. Dune 1 and Dune 2 were written during a time in the 60s and 70s where this was just such a huge part of society. And one of my favorite quotes is the beginning of Dune. It says, "Dreams are messages from the deep." And they use this thing in the movie called spice. It's a hallucinogenic, and it's able to allow you to go into your psyche and like bring things out of it.
That dude was on some...
Oh, no doubt he was on some shit.
And then the best quote of the movie, "Fear is the mind killer." What a line. He was just like in a deep place when he wrote "Fear is the mind killer."
But I use spice because they talk about it as a psychedelic, but psychedelics are able to grab things from the deep.
Can I pause there just because I am the dude that I am?
Yeah, of course.
The
dude that you are.
I don't know what I am sometimes, but I know that I am.
You're the dude pretending to be the dude, disguised as another dude.
Disguised as another dude.
But reaching deep from another dude. But seriously, we talked about what would happen if you lose these parts of yourself, and just thinking about how you just phrased it as like, what if you pull up something that is way different or unexpected, or something that might scare you?
Yeah, something you don't
Could that be some of what you're scared about?
Absolutely, for sure.
What's the quote again?
What? Dreams are messages from the deep.
So
dreams are messages from the deep.
I actually think that the thing we are most scared of is ourselves, what we could be and what we could not be. Proving that to ourselves either way. Oh my gosh, I am this. Oh my gosh, I cannot be that. These are the things that we're most scared of, I would say. What would that mean about me? Are they right about me? Is this thing that I've always been disgusted about myself, is that true? Is this thing that I've always been like, no way am I letting anyone else see that? Is that all of me? So a lot of our fears actually come to places. And that's why I say, like, I think these parts of ourselves that are, so I disagree with the fear is the mind killer, but the fear is actually something within us that's like, be scared of this because I don't know if you're ready to love this.
Be scared of this because you're not ready to love this.
Yeah.
I think fear is a mind killer is also fear inhibiting you from allowing yourself to get into the greater version of yourself.
You can say that. Could I also say
fear is the mind killer because it's actually not protecting you. It's actually
keeping you back,
holding you back.
How do you know fear is not protecting you?
No, you don't.
And so then you must ask yourself, Judah's known this ever since I was a kid. I've been intensely scared of spiders. Like I can't even go to the same room. Dude. Now, recently I've been doing, this is a bit of a vulnerable share, but doing my own work. And there was a period of my life when I was a toddler where I was kind of thrown into this open basement where I would sleep alone. And so there's all these storage boxes and stuff there. There were also spiders everywhere. Every night I would go to sleep. I thought these spiders were going to carry me off. This basement was fucking terrifying. And I thought that
unfinished basement.
No, was it?
It was
finished. It was finished. Yeah. But it might as well be unfinished. Fucking scary ass shit. And I always thought that someone was going to kidnap me. I was like ages 4 to 6, and someone was going to kidnap me, or spiders are going to come and take me, or whatever. And this is not something that was in my awareness. But I was also incredibly scared of being alone in this really scary place. This manifested for me later on of like, this is not entirely related to that, but there was something in me that was saying, spiders will remind you of the most painful time of your life. So do not go near a spider. And I had to really, I mean, I didn't have to, but it was sort of a blessing in a way to have an experience with spiders and also an integration of that really scary time in my life to where I can see spiders again and not be like, I can't be in this room. But knowing that this fearful part of myself was basically protecting me from some of the scariest memories of my life. And that feeling.
That's the crazy part, is it's not the spider, it's what that spider represents.
Yeah. So yes, there were things I couldn't do. Literally, I wouldn't go places because I'm like, there could be a spider there.
He would literally be like, Judah, there's a spider in the room. I'm going to be out here until you get it.
Yeah. And so someone could say that's inhibiting me from living my greatest potential, but it was also protecting me in a way that I couldn't even imagine. And now I'm here where I'm at.
Protecting you from what?
from feeling a feeling that was utterly intolerable theretofore.
From pain.
And really our body has an amazing way, and it could not always be entirely the case, but often it can be the case, of protecting us from feelings that would otherwise cripple us. And so I had no awareness as to like, why am I so scared of these spiders? I have no idea. Maybe I couldn't. At that time, it would not have been wise for my body to let me.
It's like falling into the fetal position. Why do we do that? Because we were safe when we were in that position at first. Did you know that?
Yeah.
And that's like a subconscious thing from so long ago.
Yeah.
How would you, I think it would be interesting to finish on, if someone were to have a calling to psychedelics, where does one start? Like there's so many different avenues to it, whether it's the mushrooms, ayahuasca, acid. How does one move through that in an effective way?
It's a good question.
Or are we not there yet?
So I'm not in a position, and the field is not in a position, the legalities are not in synchronicity to where I could say you should or should not do this. So it's interesting because you think about different difficulties that people deal with, and they can have an experience with psychedelics under one context versus another, and in one context have zero benefit, and then in another context have enormous benefit. And this is something that people kind of have an intuition on, and they describe, I don't want to say the words because it gives homage to someone who I have issues with. So I'm
not all psychedelics are created equal.
So maybe and maybe not. Who knows? Because there is also this other thing that ends up playing out when you look at people who use psychedelics and what they feel called to, is people use all manner of psychedelics and end up getting similar results in some way or another. Now, different cultures and contexts do it differently. What seems to be the case that really makes it so that you have an experience that can be of some meaning for you. You had talked about bad trip. That it's a specific word actually to the white Western world. Before that, there was only challenging trip or basically just trip.
Yeah, like it's what is bad.
Yeah, like
why
what is bad? But I think it's an important thing to think about because we definitely have in our healing frameworks, which if you want to have an analog there, it's therapy in a way. We do have good and bad therapy. We have a lot of harmful therapy, more than helpful therapy. And that's actually what I would hone in on. When you think about a psychedelic experience, what system are you using it in? Because the advent of psychedelics, or not the advent, the adoption of psychedelics into our medicalized structures doesn't do anything about how broken our system is. I would argue our inpatient and outpatient mental health services and what we do, it's all broken. It's not fixing any of that.
Yeah, it's like you talked about earlier. It's fixing this thing,
right?
But those roots still.
And so having the right environment, the right therapist, and there's a lot of people who go and get underground therapy right now too. And now you have just a whole different ballgame of basically no one's responsible for anything.
What's underground therapy?
Underground therapy just means, and there's a ton of people doing it, but any therapist or someone who even just calls themselves a therapist, you may have met people who are just like, I've done a psychedelic and I know the world now, including your world, so let me facilitate
I can think of like two people that...
Yeah. Psychedelics have an interesting way of breeding as much psychedelic narcissism as they do psychedelic humility. But
see, that's why when people ask me, when should I do it? I'm like, you'll know. I can't tell you anything. I can tell you about my experience.
Who you do it with and where you do it.
It all plays a part.
Plays a part. Now, underground basically just means you're doing it in a context that is not necessarily sanctioned or made legal. And so you're doing it.
Which is most right now.
Well, it depends because a lot of people go to other countries and do it, or people do it here and then you could be doing it in a decriminalized state. But I guess federally it's a bit different. So it's in a way. But I mean, even when we talk about other countries to go do it, there are indigenous communities that have been practicing psychedelics for thousands of years.
Yeah.
But then there's indigenous communities who have not been practicing it at all and are just like, yo, let me get some of this bread too. And so then they start facilitating ceremonies. And then you see a lot of harmful things because throughout it all, everything that I'm mentioning, all these contexts, you see physical, sexual misconduct, and you're in a vulnerable state and people take advantage of that. So this is a very important thing to consider.
What have you done anything outside of mushrooms?
Everything.
Psychedelic wise?
Everything.
Acid, DMT.
I've done
ayahuasca.
I've done acid fair amount.
It's like
a tab.
Tab on your tongue.
Yeah, mushrooms a lot. I've never done DMT or ayahuasca.
Which
ayahuasca is intense, and my sister can talk to you about it. She moved to Peru for 2 years and did it in the jungle, and it was hard. She dealt with a lot of trauma stuff. She was like, "It's work and it's intense."
But your experience between the mushroom and the acid, those are probably the two biggest psychedelics you've done. Which one had
some of the best experiences of my life? The acid was stronger. As far
in what sense? Feeling?
I had to give in. The control that you like, you got none.
More than mushrooms.
You're just like, whoa, it's going. I'm on the ride. I'm here for it. Whatever happens. South Carolina. Me and him are in South Carolina.
I know which one I'm not starting with.
My first experience.
LSD is also like almost consistently a good time.
Yeah. It's more consistent than mushrooms.
Yeah.
Me and him, the first time I ever did it, which...
Is that what acid is LSD?
Yeah, same thing.
Oh.
My first time doing it was with him in Vegas. Do I regret that slightly? Because
I didn't do it in Vegas.
It was stimulation overload. By the way, we're not suggesting anyone do any of these things. This is just my experiences. I have done them, but I did them in the best time. First time was in Vegas. My friends asked me to do it, and I just wanted to have a great time, and I did, but it was intense. But when we were in South Carolina for our best friend's bachelor party, we all took it together, and we had 2 people that weren't on it that would cook and drive the boat, and because you're not doing those types of things on it, you're not able to function in that way at all. So we had our guides in a way, and we just all knew I'm with my best friends. Like this is a place where I can let go and I don't have to control the situation. I trust him to drive the boat. I trust him to make us food. He's my best friend. This is my best friend. I trust you guys to not do anything that's going to mess with me.
So here
to
with
love me.
Surrounding environment all made a difference between Vegas and South Carolina.
We are on paddle boards in the middle of the lake with no ripples. And it was like, I remember looking at a tree. Might be a little woo-woo, whatever. I remember looking at a tree and the trees were blowing the breeze and the water was rippling together. And I was like, whoa, we are all just connected. We are so connected. And there's things in life that separate us. But at the end of the day, we're all just like living matter. And I looked at this tree and I was like, this tree is going to be here long after I'm gone. And that was a crazy thing because it's a living thing. I was like, this tree will be here for 100 years and I'll be gone in the next 50. But it got rid of my anxiety. It was like, all these things are not important. You're just here, you're living. And I remember I looked at him and our other friend and they were like, I was like, are we good? And they were like, we're good. And then the next day, our buddy was like, by the way, when I was telling you we're good, I was telling myself that because it was intense, but it was intense in the best way possible. And the only way to experience it was to give in.
Interesting. The things to highlight there is some of the things that people find would beget an experience that's welcome is a sense of psychological safety, physical safety, and ability to trust those around you, the environment around you.
Well, dude.
Like I would never do with anyone who throws little jabs at you. Because those little jabs, that little rock you throw into the calm water will ripple the whole lake. So if you have a friend that's like, nice shoes, Jeremiah, don't do it with that guy. Do it with the guy that's like, dude, you look great right now. Because then when you're on it, it amplifies. You're like, damn, I do look great right now. I feel pretty great right now.
Yeah.
And it grows. So that's what I would say. Do it with people that love on you. And while you're on it, support you and love on you. That's the main thing. Find people that will just love on you when you're doing it because it grows. Any of those little things will grow.
Love on you. I like that because I think that's part of our own issue is can we love on ourselves?
Well, I appreciate having you, man.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a roller coaster of just different topics, too. That was great. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you next time.
Yes, sir.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of In Good Company.
If you're enjoying this show, it would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. You know we love 5-star reviews. And subscribe to the pod.
This is a reminder, if you want to watch our episodes, you can do so only by subscribing to our Patreon, where you also get access to the menu and some fun announcements we have coming up.
And don't forget,
the only thing better than good food is good company.